Hi y'all, Kraken Latte here. It's that time again where I bring you my tips, facts, or experience that you may or may not find helpful. With the release of patch 10.1.5 in Dragonflight, a new NPC was added in Oribos that allows you to solo queue for Shadowlands Raid Finder difficulty. You'll find this NPC in the Covenant selection area, not far from the Covenant board. Looking for Raid, or LFR for short, is the lowest difficulty option for raids after Dragon Soul was added back in Cataclysm, and this difficulty is the one you can queue for here in the Dungeon or Raid Finder window. Of course, you can only queue for current LFR this way, which is why when an expansion is over, they later have to add an NPC for us to do it again. And if you're wondering why we'd even want to, it's because LFR has its own separate color of that raid's transmog. Sometimes there are mounts and pets too. If you'd like to see where all of the NPCs are for each raid, and there's quite a few, I've got a video covering just that. I also go over what raid each wing belongs to, since most of them don't specify for some reason. Of course, it doesn't yet have Shadowlands added, because that one was just added to the game, but I'll update it in the future. Link for that is in the description below. Now, with introductions and explanations out of the way, let's get to the meat here. Shadowlands LFR is now available for solo queue, but the question is, can we actually do it? The trend in recent years after the 9.0 level squish seems to entail us struggling with the more recent expansion raids, despite being far over-leveled. So, let's take a look. So, the short answer is yes. However, before you get excited, it's a yes, but kind of. On my 422 Retribution Paladin, I could solo some of the bosses as they really don't hurt that bad across the board. However, we're dealing with 3 different raids here. Castle Nathria, Sanctum of Domination, and the Sepulcher of the first ones. As you can imagine, these are from different patches, and the difficulty will go from easiest to hardest in that order. Castle Nathria was super easy, and I could see most level 70s and 400 item level-ish gear ripping through it. Sanctum and Sepulcher, though, less so. The problem with a lot of these, as you'd expect, are mechanics. So, since I couldn't totally solo these, I brought a friend who's also a 7400s Ret Pally to see if we could even do it. Between the two of us, we were able to do every boss in all 3 raids except the jailer himself. He's got a mind control mechanic that resets him unless we bubbled, and, well, we can only bubble so many times. Getting knocked into the holes was pretty funny too. So, for a quick rundown, here's the deal with each raid and some comments about some of the bosses. Castle Nathria, easy peasy, no issues. We tore through this like rats through cheese, even onto Nathrius himself. You might want a class with some self-heals, but I otherwise had no issues here. This is great, since now I can farm for that sword pet Remordia from Nathrius. Sanctum of Domination wasn't terrible, but these bosses hit a bit harder, so you're going to want a class that has self-heals and shields, or even a tank spec if you brave it solo. Terragru, the first boss, was doable, but I recommend getting all of the anima buffs from all of the mobs around the area before you take on the boss. We skipped those, and thus struggled a little because of it, so I was very glad I was a paladin. The Remnant of Ner'zhul technically wasn't hard, but since there was 2 of us, we really had to pay attention to the knockback mechanic, Malevolence. Because, even at full arena distance, it sometimes still pushed us off the edge to our deaths. Otherwise, this boss was really easy. Fate Scribe Rokalo caused a wipe or 2, but only because we didn't do the rune mechanics right. Make sure to stand on these and move them around to where they need to be, or he'll one-shot you after a while if you ignore them. Kel'Thuzad is a bit of a problem, mechanically speaking. While he didn't hurt much, he has a phase where someone in the raid must go into his phylactery, which if ignored, you'll get one-shot. And if everyone goes in, he resets. So we had to have 2 of us to do this boss, and only one of us do the phylactery phase to prevent him from resetting or one-shotting. Unless you've got some trick here, you probably won't be able to solo him. And of course, the star of the show here in this raid, Sylvanas. This fight, while it wasn't hard at all, was a bit frustrating and took a few tries, because the NPCs didn't always create the bridges like they were supposed to in the chains phase. They were a bit buggy. And we didn't always jump right during the final platform phase, since neither of us knew the mechanics for this boss. We had to make sure to jump to the next platform during her raise cast, or we'd get stuck, since it didn't really hurt enough to alert us to move, so keep an eye on that. The next raid, Sepulcher of the First Ones, ramps up in difficulty, and I'll honestly be impressed if you can solo everything here. The prototype Pantheon boss wasn't mechanically hard, but can really dish out some stacks damage if you don't have any way to heal yourself. Certainly keep an eye on your health here. The Vigilant Guardian boss I can see being a problem for most folks who aren't super geared, don't have self-heals, or are trying this solo. During this fight, you will have to kill waves of mobs to eventually get some orbs to spawn and bring them to the boss door. However, during this fight, the boss's core temperature will raise, and when it reaches 100, it lets out a short duration of strong AoE damage. If you can survive it, you've got this, but I really had to bubble or heal myself to do so. I'm probably doing something wrong here, but you know, that's how it be sometimes. Skullx, the worm boss, was a real pain even for two of us. For the whole fight duration, a raid-wide stacking debuff continuously ticks upwards on everyone. I couldn't even bubble it off, and had even died on the first attempt since I wasn't prepared for how much damage I would take. You're really going to need some high DPS or friends with battle reses to down this boss. I'm so glad Paladin has B-res now. Halandris wasn't hard, but during the walking phases between arenas, he can knock you off of the cliffs if you don't pay attention to where you are, so keep an eye on that. I was very bad about this. Anduin wasn't mechanically hard, but by the Titans does he do a lot of damage. I suggest bringing a tank or a strong self-heal class because this guy was ready to throw down, so be aware of that. And of course, the Jailer himself. I mentioned it already, but this was the only boss we could not take down because of his mind control mechanic, something expansion end bosses really seem to like. He kept resetting even if one of us was dead in advance, and we could only bubble so many times, so we couldn't do it long enough to get through the whole fight. So there's that. And that's the raids. Not too bad overall, but I strongly recommend bringing a friend if you have one, or just waiting until these get adjusted. Plus, there is one more bummer about this. None of these raids are set to legacy loot. They didn't even have personal loot. For some reason, they have the need greed system that doesn't take into account what classes are actually present in the raid. So the tiny bit of gear that did drop wasn't usable by either of us except for a couple of swords. Regardless, that's what we got for now, so good luck. Did you know I stream on Twitch now? I do everything from transmog to leveling to gold making, and I'm live 5 days a week to chat with, so come hang out. And there we have it. If you think I've missed information or you want to request I do a specific guide, let me know in the comments below. Even if I don't answer you, I just might add your idea to my list. As always, thank you so much for watching, and remember, it's never too latte.